If we look at the etymology of what confusion is, it is confusion, it is with fusion.
My greatest gift came from allowing confusion to persist.
Our DNA has to be relaxed, open, expanded for it to actually rise and be self-revealing to the conscious mind, where we have the actual epiphany and the realization.
The very thing that we're seeking is seeking us, and is just trying to find an opening for it.
We're living in a time where people know more than ever before, yet somehow trust themselves less. And somewhere beneath all the information, teachings, and endless searching, a quieter signal is trying to emerge. Today, we explore what happens when we stop forcing clarity and allow life to reorganize itself around coherence.
As we do. So I just invite everybody who is here with us in this sacred, exquisite space to just start drinking in some nice, deep, voluptuous, whole body breaths. Just attuning to your natural rhythmic pulse and flow of creation. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Gently melting any and all resistance, tension, friction, contraction that you feel anywhere in your body, and just noticing where those points may be. Is it in the neck, in the belly, in the chest, in the heart, in the womb, in the sacral? Allowing the energy to flow fully from your crown all the way out through your feet, connecting into your earth star energy vortices. Just letting all of that energy melt, unwind, relax, and open. Allowing the breath to be filled with the golden white light of pure source, opening you, expanding you, enlivening you, breathing life into the very cells and molecules of your being. And just begin to feel yourself opening, expanding, weightless, opening into the all, into the oneness that you are. Feeling your energy begin to occupy and inhabit and flower into the majesty of your space, your home temple, your environment, Mother Earth, our planet, the galaxies, the cosmos, and beyond, into the infinite, boundless sphere of your true united being, of everlasting, permanent, abiding, eternal, sacred, holy, divine love, pure prosperity, pure beauty, infinite light, exquisite benevolence, the gentle, luminous space of your own almighty I am presence. And letting your being, your body, your system, your open heart expand fully into the true nature of that which you are and that which we all be. And feeling the peace, the ecstasy, the bliss, the grace, and the ease in simply resting here at one with the totality of our true nature, that which is unchanging, immortal, free in the recognition of the oneness of love that we are, safe in the felt knowing and recognition of the oneness of love that we are, the presence of pure source, pure divinity, pure goodness, pure health. And just invite you to feel how easeful it is to resonate in this space of being that which you innately, naturally are and will always be.
You know, it reminds me of, there's this Chinese company that came to Alberta once, and they went to the Rocky Mountains, and they took air compressors, and they compressed the freshest air in the world into these little cans, and they went back to Beijing, and they sold them, and they made a fortune. It's like you just compressed the entirety of existence into a 5-minute thing that's on YouTube forever, and that people can just show up on YouTube, watch that, tune in, and release those exogenous chemicals in the brain that, I believe it was you that gave the stat, they're 100 times more powerful than plant medicine.
Yep. 100 times, about 100 times more potent and powerful than any exogenous substance we can introduce to the body.
It's wild. And I just want to say to people, it's the middle of 2026. It's a crunchy time out there. People are struggling with various things, but you have the power within you. And, if what just happened can be an indicator of anything, it's the indicator that you have the control panel to reality within you.
Yes. It's fascinating. I noted that my being like shifted me towards nature as I was in the activation because I
Mm,
so much of me was just in the space of, we'll bring it back to the holographic principle for a moment. As within,
mm,
so without, what happens in one place inside of us happens everywhere simultaneously.
mhm,
So that is the swiftness with which we can update our entire hologram of existence. The moment we shift into the embodiment of our God state, our love state, our true being, we alter fundamentally the fabric of our entire reality and everyone and everything in it. That's how powerful we are to
mhm.
create shift, change, and transformation in our lives in a moment.
The funny thing is, you know, you mentioned the holographic universe model, but this has been proven in, David Bohm's work that there's this like a lotus. There's this unfolding and this enfolding process that's happening on a nanosecond thing, like literally from the source point of creation into manifest reality and back. And it's like constantly happening if we notice it,
In
right?
breath, out breath.
In breath, out breath. And there's this misconception that enlightenment comes from somewhere else. It comes from a journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the old story of the initiate that goes to find the master in the mountains and sits at the master's feet. And, that was maybe correct for a certain period of history.
Yeah.
But we're on the cusp of the Aquarian age here. Like, this is a completely different time, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And someone, myself, who studies the precession of the equinoxes and the way that, celestial forces come into the planet, we're at a time of radical individuation where currents of life force are just moving through people's bodies to inform them of truth.
Yes.
It doesn't come from acquiescing to, a collective agreement anymore.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely not. It's within us, and that's
Yeah.
what we're recollecting
Hmm.
through our own breath, truly.
Yeah.
Every atom and cell in our being contains the information of the whole. It contains infinite intelligence. We have access to the all right here. We are the living Akash, clearly the field is that as well. Everything in existence, a tree, a lily, a hummingbird, it all contains the information for the totality of the infinite being that we are. And so it's all right here. And we're shifting into a space where one, the hyperacceleration of things doesn't really grant too much leeway for endless processing
Mm.
anymore. That's happening automatically, but really staying in
Hmm.
momentum and play and dancing through life and breath, keeping the energy mobile will efficientize that processing through the breath, through all of this, and really our capacity to not hold on to time in the mind, because that is where human suffering is generated from the thinking mind that is
Hmm.
bound in concepts of a perceivable past or future. That is where we divert and leak our energy, our power, our inner resources. We stay timeless, connected to the breath, in the dance of life, in love with life, become masters of directing our own light of awareness and consciousness in the here and now. Those other layers begin to naturally release from our being, these layers that we've been carrying and perpetuating within our
Mm.
system. And there is a very direct way, and the direct way is so it's an invitation. There are many ways, there are many pathways, and it is so unique to each of us how we choose to unfold that journey, contingent upon what our being is calling from us, for us, from moment to moment to moment. And we have this opportunity to go direct in a way that is actually the most graceful, harmonious, enjoyable, playful, enlivening for our own being and circuitry. And it's truly about stabilizing it once it's accessed.
That is beautiful. I am fully with you. And I'd also like to speak into the acknowledgement that some people may be holding on to other models of how reality works that they've built a life upon. And that it's okay. Like, what happens when that collapses? We were just talking about this a few minutes ago, right? This is a very typical masculine thing as we build the theory of everything in our heads,
Yeah.
but it's not reality. It's not that.
Mm,
It's an approximation of that to some finite degree.
yeah.
And on the other side, there might be people who think that they're undeserving of that. That
Mhm.
their identity structure is rooted in separation, limitation, and a learned sort of helplessness, right? But this is your permission slip
Yeah.
to become all that there is. But I feel like that needed to be acknowledged first. That there becomes the permission slip to say, okay, Solara, here I am. I'm willing to go there within myself now.
Totally. And those layers are so sacred and precious and incredibly powerful. There's so many there are nuanced layers of what you shared. I could go into a transmission on so many of the so many jewels you just brought forth because it's really the components of the human condition that we all
Yeah.
experience, every single one of us, including myself. And it's, if I'll just move into this piece first. Well, the notion of deservedness as a concept crafted by the mind of man. If I'm
Mm,
resting at the throne of my divinity that knows itself as pure divine love expressing everywhere, does the notion of worthiness, deservedness even arise? I am the source. I am pure love. Of course I'm worthy. I am life itself. My very existence, by virtue of my existence, I deserve to thrive. And so, looking at it from the layer of conceptualization, these many layers that we create concepts out of that we then have to process, move through, transcend, transform, transcend. And am I worthy of my own divinity? Am I worthy to experience the love that I am?
mm.
Well, you are that, and you can't not be that.
Yeah.
So let's just tune into that. And the other piece, will you bring me back to the core essence of the very first?
The theory of everything that we construct in our minds that is finite in nature, that we're
Mhm.
attached to, and
Ah,
that the inevitable collapse of that back into the infinite,
yes, the dissolution of
the
identity.
dissolution of that final identity, because
Yeah.
it's the most sophisticated one because it's trying to approximate the infinite,
Mhm.
but it's finite because it's a model.
Yes. And it's not the natural emergent nature of
Of
nature
course not.
itself. And that's the fear, because I tuned into this years and years ago, because there was a beautiful being who I adore deeply, and he kept bringing forward that our greatest fear was the fear of feeling. And I was like, let me tune into this. Like, what? Because I was compelled to go to the root of the root of the root is what is the greatest fear. And I actually have a beautiful memory story of being the void and awakening to thyself from that
Mm,
space of unified emptiness, which I can speak directly to the signature of fear and or staggerment. There's a couple ways to look at
mm,
but the vibrational frequency of what that is and where it comes from a primordial lens. But it's that the human. So here's the example that I'll provide because everybody can relate to this. We craft these models and these frameworks of reality that create a sense of self-value, of self meaning, of safety, of familiarity, something that we can have as a structure of permanency within a transient, impermanent experience.
mm,
And so, what our infinite intelligence is inviting us to is the space where the true permanence exists in the restfulness of our being.
mm.
being the one, being that field beyond definition. And then of course that has its own signature that begins to transmit and express through us the wisdom that has already been written. But it's that final layer of like, I've created this model and I'm like a child with a security blanket. I have a blanket. I've had this blankie since I was little. My actual sister, who is 10 years older than me, still has her blankie and she takes it with her almost everywhere she goes. She brings this. It's her favorite object of all times. And it's like fundamentally a part of her being now. And it's like this is the moment of giving up the identity and it's like we're infinity and we're here and we're saying to ourselves, I have this plush, velvety, delicious, divine Alaskan king blanket that I would love to gift to you. Like the grandest of the grand. But first you're gonna have to set down this blankie that has provided you a sense of comfort and safety and familiarity for as long as you've known. And in the moment between you setting that down before I gift you, before I place this new treasure trove of wonders in your hands, there's going to be a moment where you're bare naked and nude. And you might not, what do I grasp onto? Who am I? What am I? There's not anything to hold on to or identify with or to lead my reality from the construct of, because that which I have been relying on as my sense of self and identity and value and all of that is no longer. And so what does that mean? So it's this sweet spot of of the human being learning to trust that it's okay to actually just release. And in the release, not only is there supreme freedom and liberation from ourselves in the constructs of cages we've built around ourselves for ourselves, there's also this magnificent treasure house of eternity and wisdom and genius and beauty that wishes to emerge from our being unencumbered, that's just right there for us to be experiencing the moment we set that down.
It's that threshold space,
Yes.
that, the doorway to the Alaskan king blanket from the blankie blanket, where we have no blanket, right?
Right.
So we're seeing the new thing, but we're grasping for the old thing, and we're ricocheting between the two.
Yep.
And that's oftentimes where we can get very confused, or it can loop until we just surrender, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is biologically, we have DNA, right? And our DNA carries the artifacts of ancestral conditioning, of collective conditioning. It's epigenetics, it changes, right? And it modulates, but it still has this momentum carried from a previous time, which really is the old identity encoded. But then, Richard Rudd in the Gene Keys tells us that there's a higher expansion when the frequency of light passing through that genetic sequence increases, it modulates into that greatness.
Yes.
And then that greatness then yields into unity. I want to ask you about this because I know you have an extensive background not only in neuroscience but in testing of your abilities.
Yes.
And so the realizations that you've had come from actual biological metrics. Is that true?
Yes. And like deep, deep, deep experiential wisdom. I have been
Mhm.
stretched to the max in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And I'd love to like let's speak into the nuance of that transformative arc for a moment, because I feel like the beautiful beloveds with us can have a lot of clarity come forth from this
Mm.
for their own direct experience. It's in that threshold space, some typical things that arise is that before we just release and surrender and ultimately open, merge, and conduct ourselves at a more cosmic scale, because that's the nature of the movement of that unfolding. Surrender is just the first space before we merge. But before that, all of those patterns that you're speaking to come up like fast and furious sometimes, and they loop.
Mhm.
They have to exhaust themselves to some extent. And so we cycle through them at a very accelerated pace in those moments. And then the mind comes
Mm.
in and it's trying to navigate, control its own transformation, speed it up, accelerate it, figure it out. identify what's happening. And quite literally, confusion arises in that space because if we look at the etymology of what confusion is, it is confusion, it is with fusion. In those thresholds, something that has existed as dual in our consciousness up until that point is finding its synthesis in unification and oneness. So we're literally resolving some degree of duality within our being at those thresholds. It's that coming into a greater unified space. And that's where the confusion can come in because we're now in a battle with the previous model that was likely that it was on some level or layer architected from a basis of dualism is now coming into a greater sense of oneness, which has its own new laws and ways that the energy moves and behaves.
Mm.
If we begin to function, our functionality shifts, our capabilities and capacities shift.
It's fascinating what you're saying about confusion. Are you familiar with chaos theory in mathematics?
I've heard it
Okay.
spoken to lightly. I'm not,
Okay.
yeah.
Because chaos theory actually speaks exactly to this. So the chaos theory is the mathematical modeling of randomness, of chaos, right? And that's what confusion looks like on one level. When you zoom out and you take a more macroscopic look at it, you see that that chaos is actually organizing slowly on a larger scale. It's the micro eddies and swirls that look chaotic, but it's actually part of a symphony of things that are evolving like a spiraling up and a spiraling down until they resolve into unity,
Yes.
right?
And
And
that's
so,
exactly,
yeah. And so on one perspective, confusion looks like decoherence and absolute chaos, and that's what we reject, and that's why we resist confusion. I learned my greatest gift came from allowing confusion to persist
yes.
and taking action in spite of not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that is actually the clearest movement forward because I have gate 47 in gene keys as a primary placement, which is the gate of transmutation of confusion.
Yes.
And
Wow.
when I sat with that and I really kind of dug into it and I realized, wow, like confusion's just always going to be there. And I
Mm.
just allow it. So if my words are choppy or sloppy or they're coming out casual, just let them come out. You know,
Yes.
no one's going to judge you actually because they're experiencing you much differently than you're experiencing yourself anyway.
Hmm.
And so who cares? And then all of a sudden when you release into that, that confusion becomes a doorway into the absolute. And then it's just richness of bliss and all the good chemicals flowing through the body.
Yeah, well, that's such a beautiful part of the self-organization
Yeah.
that's unfolding. And that's also for us as human beings, those beautiful holy moments where we get to burn up alchemically
Mm.
those parts of us that have uh any attachment at all to what anyone or anything feels about us. And that unto itself is an entire transmission of, we spoke to it a bit before this beautiful interview as well, this sense of approval and validation. And actually, they did it.
That line, what was that line you had?
Oh,
Validation.
your most powerful version of you is the version of you that requires zero validation. And it's only us. I am the only one here.
Right.
So who's approving or not approving? It's all a reflective, these nuanced reflections of where I do or don't approve of my own self, which is where I am or am not allowing my own self to
Mm.
happen fluidly, which is part of the self-organization process, which is what you just shared about. So if we're looking at it, the visual that I saw was it was like a spiral or a vortex almost. There's all these layers of seeming chaos, but it's just in a process of self-organizing
Yeah.
itself, just like the vibration plates with the salt. You put the salt on the table, you amplify the frequency hertz, it organizes into a stabilized structure. This is what's happening in these thresholds within our biology and physiology as well. It's got a set point. It's this sacred geometrical structure that it is normalized to. When we raise the frequency, the hertz, the salt is shaken up all over that table to reestablish itself in a more rich, complex, multifaceted pattern that still contains the information of the previous pattern. And that's what's actually happening in our system. So if we can hold that awareness and have grace with ourselves, like, oh, I'm just reorganizing into a greater harmonic right now. And it's always going to be better. It's always going to be more beautiful and delicious and divine. I can be with this transformative arc gracefully.
Yeah. You grew up at a time where you had the dial radios, right? When you were a kid in the car, yeah. So
Yeah.
like I think of it like, if you're tired of listening to 96.3, which is country, you don't want to listen to country anymore, you want to listen to disco. Disco's on 97.1. You're gonna have to go through a threshold as you turn that dial from 96.3 to before you get to 97.1. You might get scared and go, well, the country's better than this.
Ah, yeah. So
But you might get
cool.
to 97.0 and you're on the cusp and you can kind of hear that station coming in. And that's the one you want. And that's the one that says, oh, yeah, that is the sound of the present moment. And I just need to let the dial turn a little more and in there. Just adjust the frequency a bit. That's really all we're doing with radios.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Such a brilliant example.
Yeah.
It is. It's that. And, it's the recognizing where the mind comes in and creates a narrative about
Mm,
what it thinks is happening. And so
mm.
these evolutionary layers are so valuable to be aware of because it allows us to navigate and unfold with much more elegance and ease and naturalness in our experience. Like, okay, it's all good. This is actually, I'm becoming more of me, essentially.
I've been blessed with the divine gift of mundane allegory for that reason. Because you have to have a sense of humor about the whole thing, and,
Oh, for
and, and
sure.
it's got to be pretty like innocent and childlike sometimes. Because even if you're listening to this conversation, like we're talking with this language and this precision, and it can feel a bit serious in its grandiosity, and then sometimes it's laughing at the absurdity at the same time simultaneously.
Yeah, totally. Because,
Yeah.
right, how many times have you felt like you were literally going to fall off the edge of existence itself when you're in some of those transformative spaces where it's
Oh
just
yeah.
completely like naked to the layer of like terror mixed with exhilaration and not quite knowing
Mm,
exactly which one it is at any given moment. Like, just I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea who I am, where I'm going, what's unfolding. How am I going to eat tomorrow?
mm,
Like the whole, all, and so to honor the
mm.
sanctity of the human experience in that, because that's a lot of what we navigate in those spaces. And then we become the more of those unfoldments into new and new octaves, newer octaves of our being we experience, we start to discern the pattern.
Yeah.
It's okay, this is what's actually happening here.
Mm.
And not only is it safe, it's actually quite marvelous because this means I'm about to experience more beauty, more majesty, more love, more radiance, more prosperity, more all the glorious goodness of my true being.
Coherence is also the speed or velocity at which a system can remember itself.
Hmm.
So when we can encounter that confusion or that chaos and remember ourselves and bring that into the overarching order.
Yes. And that's the elegance of surrender. If one is able, which we all are, to go beyond the thinking mind and deeply feel, touch, be fully inhabiting, breathing into, feeling into the physical vessel, coming into the sensory experience, listening, feeling, touching, tasting, breathing, to go beyond the thinking mind, then we create internal spaciousness for that transformation to unfold more seamlessly without the mind, which is the generator of resistance. Every thought or every narrative or loop or perception that we're having that is discordant with our true nature is literally like a kink in the hose. It introduces friction to the system that is wishing to flower seamlessly.
I think that's why women they're more engaged in the conscious process nowadays because
Mm,
there's a natural disposition to surrender.
Hmm.
Men have an extra inbuilt step in that they need it to be a proven process first before, so they need that mental checkpoint. They're like, okay, if that will get me the car, then I'll surrender. If that will get me the whatever. It's the silliest thing, but because I've been around 80% women in the conscious sphere just because of the demographics. And women are always just like, just feel and surrender. And it's just like, that works for women. For men, we do need this layer of understanding first.
Hmm.
And that, so that it's like the mind isn't necessarily, it has its own intelligence, but it's the gatekeeper of that.
Yes.
And so it needs to be honored and respected first. And
Hmm.
that's why we have a teaching or a model or something as a first step. The problem is when we don't relinquish that,
Ah, yes.
right? If we can see it as a catalyst to surrender and
Hmm.
then dismiss, like let it go and let it dissolve after that, then it's beautiful.
Yes.
And then we saw there's never a need for a teaching in the first place. The teaching is simply to get past this artificial construct of the mind. And in India, on that subcontinent, there were probably there's a higher concentration of non-dual realizers than I think many other places in the world, especially in times past. And it was juxtaposed by the British who came in that imposed a very rigid hierarchical caste structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has this element of beings in great states of realization and a society where people literally, there's the lowest caste, were called the untouchables. And they were conditioned to believe that they were undeserving of anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that is the nature of what the mind has become throughout the ages, is it becomes this series of limiting constructs. Find that thing that will take down the house of cards, the
Mm-hmm.
precise blow to that structure, that chink in the armor that gets in, allows it to dissolve so that surrender occurs.
Yes. And there's the dynamic control versus pure power
Mm,
or grace. We can call it power and true power, pure power and grace are deeply interchangeable. And control, and when a being is not inhabiting their full power of being the one, of harmonic synergy and accordance with its whole being, then it resorts to control structures to attempt to uh, instead of being the one that self-organizes reality naturally, organically from within. If we're not inhabiting ourselves in that space, then we are trying to control the outer world.
yeah, it's the difference between, I manufacture coherence
Hmm.
versus I allow power to flow through me and self-organize, right?
Hmm.
Be-
I am,
yeah.
yeah, I am power, and my being is the orchestrator, it's the conductor. And so as I simply reside there, I've
Hmm.
already now just created balance throughout
Hmm.
my entire existence. And then from that space, there's conductivity. So even with the arc of surrender, and really it can be graceful, which is simply learning to, and this is how they've been able to, through the assessments with my being, like how is it possible within a second to drop into a gamma state and be there? Like I know how to stop thinking, and I practiced that for a very, very long time. But when I first started, I did it. It was a literal applied effort for me. I sat there because my mind was hyperactive, and I was like, okay, I'm going to master this. And I sat with myself until I did. I'd watch my thoughts, I'd release them, I'd see where I grabbed onto them and started looping them, became so attuned to the nature of my own mind, my own consciousness, my own faculties, sat with it until I was thought free and could just drop into the deeper multisensory intelligence of pure intelligence itself within my being and laced throughout all of creation and existence as the unified field of pure genius intelligence. And so surrender can be as simple as that. If you most masters who share the story of their awakening, what happened? There was a moment, there was an opening, there was a space, where the construct wasn't being fueled anymore, whether it was through a catalyst that came in or whether it was an internal realization that kind of silenced this whole narrative, this noise that was going on for so long, incessantly. And there was space for supreme intelligence to come through. And so we can craft that within our own being intentionally at will with tremendous grace.
My professional background was geological engineering, and part of
Mhm.
that was groundwater, retaining walls for rock faces on mountain passes, and dams. And do you know
Mhm.
what happens if a crack forms in a dam?
I don't, but I can imagine that
Could you
whole thing.
imagine the pressure of holding back a lake?
Hmm.
And if a crack forms and a trickle of water, of highly pressurized water gets through, do you think that crack would propagate very quickly and the dam would come down
Yes.
within seconds or minutes? Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's the same way, source is pressing up against our dam.
Hmm.
And where it can find that crack and it comes through, it breaks down the entire dam that we've created. And the dam being the construct,
Yes.
that
Yes.
crystallized identity.
Hmm.
Why it's there, is the same reason why, there's control structures on this planet.
Hmm.
And they've convinced people that have been willing to submit to them of certain identities that are
Yeah.
formed. You are a labor unit. You are a worker. You are this in society. I think of women. Over the last 2,000 years, the amount of conditioning they've allowed that's put them in this very suppressed state. And then in the last 50 years, we've watched all of that come off. The dam has broken, and now we have this rise of the divine feminine in our world that's healing the planet at a rapid scale.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, men want to be in relationship with women, so they have to do their work. And they see that if women's standards go up, the men start cleaning themselves up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's beautiful that we're in that dance of
Yeah.
calibration with one another. And as you're sharing, so this is a beautiful, I'd love to share from the inverse perspective. So it's like, the divinity attempting to reach us, right? Like love is an infinite spring. All it wants to do is pour out its love onto all of us within and around. It's just, that's the nature of infinity. It's infinitely generative. It's infinitely resourceful, loving, all of that. And it's like, is there an open chalice around here? Somebody please open. I wish to pour into you.
Mm,
So that then the inverse side of that is instead of like divinity pushing through, there's that component of, the acceleration of light and consciousness. And I only work with light in my activations for this very purpose. That's all there really is to work
mm,
with to bring everything into that space of pure unification, first and foremost in here, but throughout the totality. And for us, it's like the nature of the chatter can be so incessant that there's not even a break. So that's our, we talk about blocks, and I have a different framework as well around that, or a realization around what's happening when we perceive blocks. But that's creating so much friction and resistance in our system that there's actually not space for that informational blueprint of infinite intelligence to actually emerge from our own DNA codex.
mhm.
Just, the light information in our DNA is when we receive revelation and epiphany and insight into the true nature of reality and self. That's where it's coming from. Our DNA has to be relaxed, open, expanded for it to actually rise and be self-revealing to the conscious mind, where we have the actual epiphany and the realization. So sometimes there's not space because the mind is so active so incessantly. And so it's just waiting for a pause. And then it actually comes forth from our own being. It literally blooms from the seeded blueprint of our DNA, just like a flower blossoms. We plant the seed.
Richard Rudd defines addiction as fusing that gap between phenomena,
Mm,
right? It's like that gap between phenomena is exactly where divinity will come in.
yes.
But we're terrified of that, so we try to fill it with something
Hmm.
to make existence meaningful.
Yeah.
Whereas the very thing that we're seeking is seeking us.
Yeah.
and is just trying to find an opening for it
Yeah.
to come in.
You just brought me back to, I didn't complete this stream earlier, the greatest fear. So the gentleman was sharing that the greatest fear that he felt for beings is the fear of feeling. And I felt as there's something deeper. So I went into it, and it was the fear of presence, the fear of being with oneself, whatever that looks like, the fear of relinquishing our concepts of time, because the amygdala, the survival mind, is quite literally, it is a mechanism of survival. So by recollecting the past to forecast the future, that's the way that our notion of a past keeps us safe. And if we can actually predict then the future based on those models and navigate safely here, then we keep ourselves safe in the future. And some degree of that is typically always taking place. So if I release that, oh, I don't have a vision, a blueprint. Of course, that all becomes self-revealing. So it's like the space I speak from is the space of infinite intelligence. I cannot think and speak anymore. The functionality no longer exists in my being. It's arising from
Mm.
a deeper well of wisdom and intelligence within my being. And we all have access to that. But the beta mind, the survival mind, is always predicting, always calculating, always formulating, doing everything in its power to keep itself safe based on the notion of a past or a future. So if we let that go, then what? I'm fully in the raw here and now. I'm naked. I'm a virgin to every moment.
You and I both come from a culture that reinforces the survival mechanism, right? So there's this external pressure, noise coming in that a lot of people cannot break free of, right? They
Mm,
get caught up in the fear cycles. However, I had the rare chance to interview the Mamos. Do you know the Mamos tribe in Colombia?
I do not.
Okay,
Not
so
yet.
they've lived in an unbroken lineage for 19,000 years
Yeah.
in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Colombia. Their area's been designated as sanctuary. Children from the age of 0 to 8, they live in darkness with the parents to do their spiritual training. So their spiritual training is complete by the age of 8. When they're 25, they go as emissaries to the outside world to bring forth messages of Gaia. And I think past the age of 50, they live in reclusion again. And the
Hmm.
elders just sit in this cove, and they're just in constant communion with Gaia. But what they do is in those 8 years, where those 8 years are spent to train children during that time when they're mostly in theta to have a very different relationship with presence.
Hmm.
And there's in India there's been different times and traditions where they've taken young children up until the age of 8 or 10, and they've given them training. So in enlightened cultures, they understand this principle that just being in a biological vessel, there's going to be a natural survival instinct, and that the survival instinct needs to be met and you know allowed to kind of find its resolution, and that can happen if we provide the right context at a fairly early age. And
Yes.
so the conversation that we talk about a lot, probably more than anything else, is the building of enlightened cultures of the future.
Yes.
And
Mm.
that's really what you said there about the amygdala and the fear structure. It's like it is extremely difficult to do that in the society we live. And so I want to take the last part of this conversation and talk about coherence, technology, the future of where this is going, and what we see as a vision for where humanity can lead.
Yes, beautiful. Well, that is a wholly loaded question, but really it's the crystallization of heaven on earth, pure paradise from the inside out, from within the core and the nucleus of our very own being. Because to actually, the reason why it is not fully crystallized right now is because the consciousness of humanity is not fully on board. And it's that simple. The consciousness is foundational. And
Mhm.
so as we illuminate all of ourselves from within and our energy extends into our allness, that blueprint begins to emerge from within each of us. And it's an incredibly diverse creation. You have a unique blueprint. I have a unique blueprint. Every holy being with us here has a unique blueprint and a genius and a living intelligence of divine eternal wisdom within them that wishes to express, whether it's in the space of education or new governance systems or economics, art, music, sound, new systemic architectures for humanity. And that's what we're shifting into, a humanity that is operating in concert with the divine design of life and nature and intelligence itself. And this will unfold itself through all sectors in all domains of our creation. There are many beings, as you know, we're deeply like in the rooted
Mm.
earthy groundwork of building and creating all of this, from the consciousness layers to the actual physicality of it and the governance and all of those components. But we each have something profoundly unique to contribute to that. And that requires us to first know thyself and then allow thyself to emerge in our full radiance and glory, to gift our essence, to gift our presence to this world, which is what allows it to then thrive. And so we are quite literally, as we remodel, reorganize consciousness internally, we will see that outpictured in the new societal structures for planetary flourishing that come forth. And there's so much nuance we can move into.
Let's paint a quick picture of people.
Yeah.
Spiraling geometries, architecture that's modeled after these geometries. So you step into a coherent field where free energy moves through the architecture into those geometric structures, creating this harmonic resonance. You go in there and you're high.
Yes.
You're high on, these divine currents, and that gardens are flourishing, and the it's recursively every generation of plant and crop is becoming more and more abundant in its enzymes and its nutrients and its minerals, and they're in living communion with the people and the DNA of the people, so that the plants are recursively learning what to provide to people so that we eat less because the food becomes more nourishing. People are existing as themselves in their individuated genius, and that's honored and uplifted. It's much like nature, where we have ecosystems, but every part of the ecosystem is hyper individualized. you
Yes.
know the bear grabs the salmon out of the river, puts its carcass at the root of the tree that fertilizes the soil, and other plants grow, and the whole forest benefits from this process that seems unrelated. And
Hmm.
that's how the technology will be modeled after biological systems.
Yes.
And that's the most exciting thing. Like, for me, as a infinite creator, if I take that lens, we've got amazing technology now.
Oh my goodness.
It needs a
Yes.
couple tweaks. A couple
Yeah.
tweaks and that's it. But when we
Uh-huh.
get that into this rightful context of people living in true communion with architecture that reflects the divine blueprint,
Yes.
with consciousness and governance that is constantly uplifting and moving forward for the benefit of all, we're going to see not just a golden age or a crystalline identity, but what do you call it, Solara?
It's the diamond brilliance of pure source. And we'll see, if we look into society now and all these, we have rectilinear structures. We're crammed into these small places. We're maximizing one natural resource or two natural resources. What we're talking about is the fluidity of true generative free energy that begins within the superflow of pure consciousness itself. And then we have circular, geometrically coherent, cohesive, beautiful housing structures and living structures and free energy that generates and regenerates and fuels back into itself throughout the total ecosystem of life itself. And so there's such exquisite fluidity in that, where we return to this space of pristine energy and aliveness. It's like that which we've got 50 technologies to counteract the 50 ways that we're living out of coherence with our divine blueprint. And so we're really returning to, as you shared, like I call it the brilliant earth blueprint, the divine blueprint of nature and the wider ecosystem of energy and consciousness and intelligence itself. in every area of life is going to reflect that. So yes, you walk into a home and you're being harmonized. And not only that, you are harmonized, and now you're being amplified and inspired, in spiritus, filled with
Mm.
spirit, allowing your genius to gush forth, because everything within and without atmospherically is supporting you to be all that you are.
And this is just a natural unfolding when you're in that I amness.
Right.
And that's why, if you've liked this interview and you're feeling like, okay, like what you just described there is where I want to live.
Mhm.
Where's the rent on that? Where's the listing for it on Zillow? No, before you got to get there, we have to be applying this coherence to our lives. We have to be in the I amness. And, Solara and I are going to be doing a lot of work with these, new civilizations, you can say. But the first step or the next step from here is really to start to live into the field of creation, living there, being there, consciously anchoring yourself in that. And so we're offering a pay what you want workshop on June 4th to come out with us, where we're going to basically be embodying the I amness together. Solara is going to be sharing some practices. We're going to be clarifying our signal from the noise of the world. And this is going to be a space for just pure source intelligence to come through and to encode you with your unique genius blueprint for how you're meant to operate within that overarching structure.
I'm so excited. And yes, with that, I just would invite everybody to tune into the spaces where you're infinite artisan and your whole life is unfolding in sweet synchronicity, and you're experiencing all the beauty and the marvels and the momentum, the momentous goodness of your own being unfolding itself, and everything synced up, and it's one thing after the next, and everything's in this positive trajectory. That is our very natural, organic state of living and being on a liquid continuum. This is available to us. And then from that space, the sheer creative inspiration and the genius, and oh, I would love to craft this, and I would love to sculpt this. And my life is filled with artisanal masterpieces from artists who I absolutely adore. I just actually had this beautiful piece crafted and working in the housing industry as well, with new geometric structures for humanity and agriculture and all of this. And it's coming from people who are operating from this space, and they're allowing their brilliance to emerge, frequency signatures that actually fundamentally harmonize
It's
or
funny you say
the
that
human
because
body. And so imagine us living from that space of high synchronicity, high fidelity synchronicity, and then all of this majesty becoming the norm. These what we consider novelties now, although I'm surrounded, I'm looking at my environment, and I'm surrounded by like so much beauty and art and crystals and red light, and I've the tinctures and the elixirs and the free energy technologies. Imagine this being our natural way of being in communion with nature, with technology, with the technology of our consciousness, and being able to provide all of this for one another. Like it's just there's so much profound beauty and artistry and health and vibrance that comes forth from all of this. And so it's pure creation, and then we're going even beyond that. It's what are my faculties and capacities as the infinite artisan, first and foremost, to experience my own life and my own world operating at that high level of synchronicity, so that I'm experiencing love and beauty and sacred union and prosperity everywhere. And then what does that look like at scale? Those are we're actively involved in creating these spaces, and that is what we are inviting you into to experience with us.
given the fact that a lot of people are, worried about things like the AI data centers and Iran and the fuel, like I asked you about Iran a few months ago, and you just look at me and go, you know what? If you're with me, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't even have, there's zero possibility or option of that unfolding in my auric field.
No, because you're riding on a wavelength. This is your best bet to make a positive change in the world is to do this.
Yeah.
It's not from protesting. It's not from posting awareness and sharing conspiracy theories on the internet. It comes from this. It comes from being that aliveness that you already are and just bringing that forward and radiating into the world because it's contagious.
No matter how well intentioned the other stuff is, we're just fueling it
Yeah.
unintentionally. It's not actually supporting it, but we be it, then all we can experience is it.
Yeah.
And that's the simplicity.
You know, Edgar Casey, about 80 years ago, he had a prediction for the year 2027. And he says it's going to be a year of great crisis because America is going to have a spiritual awakening.
Ah,
And
yes.
all of the systems that people have bought into and have given and built are going to be obsolete on the back end of this awakening. You know, and whether that's true or not, like I don't really assign a lot of weight to prophecies, but it is something that we're feeling right now. We're feeling that this existing thing is running out of steam. It's a finite control construct that's literally in its dying gasp. And out of the ashes of it crumbling rises the potential for a brilliant new civilization. And so that's the frequencies. Don't go down with the ship. You don't have to. Be on the cutting edge of what's coming in now. And it's so much more beautiful.
Yes.
Yes. So hope to see you on the 4th. And if you're watching this later, because this is probably going to be on YouTube forever, because we have the best meditation ever at the beginning of this, there'll be a link to get the replay. So don't worry. I mean, this is something that's going to be very precious. And we're basically here to share this with people because now is the time. And when I really sit with it and tune in, how can I make the biggest contribution to the world? It's this.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
thank you. This today is more important than anything else I'm doing, having
Hmm.
this conversation.
Yeah.
And I pray that it reaches and touches the hearts of all who are willing to have that little crack.
Yeah. So juicy and delicious when we let it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And just like such a beautiful, exquisite community and family we have built around us. And it's just welcoming more beautiful holy souls into the space of that because this is like holding the holy torch, having the spine of the I am. This is where we're going. As you shared, mathematically, everything is self-organizing back into supreme oneness and coherence. It's what's happening. And no amount of futile resistance from anything is going to hinder the momentous nature of that. And we
Mm.
are certainly in the embodied ceremony and prayer of that each day. And so we just, there's so much glorious beauty and love and creativity available. And when we all come together in this space, it deepens, it richens, it amplifies, and we just maximize the quality of life
Ooh.
together, which is what we're here to do. And so thank you as well. Pure, delicious energy. I'm so
Oh.
grateful for your being. I'm so grateful for our communities. I'm grateful for this lavish existence we are blessed to be living. And let's play.
And that's a high note to sign off on this one. So we know you know where to find us. We hope to see you there. And if not, just replay the beginning of this one a few times and really encode yourself with the
Yeah.
frequency of that. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.